I'm going to be removing this today and fitting the hideaway, federal signal hideaway lights in here, into the reversing lights where they should be. So, let's crack the boot open, or trunk if you're American, and get this trim off. I believe the panel was only held in with 10 bolts, so only one way to find out. Undo the ones that I can see and take a look. I made a start in the middle of the rear trim, firstly removing the 4 8mm bolts that are holding in the number plate or license plate bulb, and the 2 that actually sit behind the license plate themselves. They weren't particularly hard to take out, however they were quite long and required a little bit of patience just to keep twisting away until they finally come out. Just 2 more to go. Once the last bolt was removed, I then made a start on removing the actual number plate bulb itself and disconnecting it from the trim and moving that away, following straight on by going into the back of the trunk and undoing the 10mm nuts that were all holding the actual rest of the trim in place. Unfortunately, 2 of the nuts were either seized on or had been over tightened and I couldn't undo them. So the only way I could get that off was then to actually unscrew it from the trim itself, so the whole nut and bolt come out from the back of the trim. That was the only way I could get them off. With the trim now removed from the car, I had to then drill a 22mm hole into the reversing light recess area so that the hideaway would slip straight in there and be out of sight. And it looks like a perfect fit. With the hole now drilled, all I had to do was turn the trim upside down and shake out all the loose drill shavings that were in there so that it was nice and clean and ready for the hideaway to be screwed in. Unfortunately, there is no quick way of doing this. It's just the fact then of having to take the self-tapping screw and screw it down through the plastic so it goes in nice and tight and has a perfect seal. Maybe I need to invest in an electric screwdriver, which will probably speed the process up a little bit, but at this stage I don't think it would be beneficial, as I don't use the tools often enough to warrant purchasing one. Lovely quick job, look. So slightly out, not too bad though, because they've been done by hand or eye of sight, so no measuring up, ain't got time for all that. So that's the hideaways fitted. Just need to bolt them back in. Sorry, just need to bolt this now back in to the trunk. Before fitting the trim back on, I did decide just to clean around the edges of where the trim would sit on the trunk side, because it was very grimy and very dirty, where I don't think it had been removed for the best part of 6 or 7 years. A bit of an error on my part here. I should have actually moved the camera around a little bit more so you could see what I was doing. What I was doing though was clipping the wires for the reversing lights back on and then actually plugging the reversing lights back into their holders. And then it was the fact of putting the reversing lights back into the bulb holders and then finally pushing the license plate back through the little hole, ready to push the trim back on and start tightening up the nuts. This is why I wear glasses, because as you can see quite clearly, I didn't have it quite lined up right to put the bolts back through the holes. However, perseverance eventually got it back in. After that, it was just the fact of doing the reverse of taking off and putting the nuts back on and screwing them up just so that they were nipped up tight enough not to come loose, but not loose enough that they would then fall out. I would just like to apologise for pulling some unusual shapes and pulling some very unusual faces. I promise you I don't do that all the time. This was done on a Sunday afternoon, as you can see. I had to speed it up because I wasn't rushing. On a side note, I do need to clean out the trunk. It's really messy in there, and that is a future job because I need to start laying the wires for all the lighting. This one that I was doing up and the one next to it was the more difficult one, because that was the one where the nuts were actually stuck onto the bolts. So I then had to re-screw the bolt itself back into the trim. Then it was just a case of repeating on this side what I'd done on the other side. Just a little tap on the booty to show it who's in charge. And finally, the last nut is going in on the inside of the trunk. So once I've done that, I will then move on to the outside and refit the 4 screws. Again, all I did here was the reverse of what I did taking them out, one at a time, put the screw in, make it nice and tight, job's a good un. Here I'm just twisting the number plate bulb holder back into the bulb socket itself and holding it up ready to screw down. Now, the one thing I have found with this GoPro is it does keep switching off, which is why you'll find me periodically looking at it, because it doesn't always make the beeping noise to tell me that it's switched itself off. And I wouldn't want you to miss out on any content. Just saying hello to a neighbour there. The only thing wrong with this trim, unfortunately, is if you just look under where the police interceptor badge is, there is a crack in the bottom part of the trim. I'm not going to be able to do anything with it, so it'll have to stay as it is. And that's the last screw tightened down. And the job's done. As easy as that. That was actually quite a quick job, and I'm really surprised. So, look, as always, if you are enjoying this channel, please make sure you like, please make sure you subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.